The story shows that previous offenses often attract the special attention of the police and influence the severity of the punishment. However, suspects do not always prove to be guilty. The main task of law enforcement agencies and the court is to carefully investigate each case and fairly assess involvement. In this tangled story, the investigators had to make great efforts to uncover the truth. Laura Lee Feist from Orange County, California, was dating James Kendall, a student from her college. Despite the good relationship, there was a serious problem. James continued to maintain contact with other women. When Laura found out about this, she did not simply end the relationship, but devised a revenge plan while continuing to date him. On the 11th of May, 1982, James brought Laura in his pickup to her house in Laguna Beach. She got out, retrieved a revolver, and returned to the car. An incident occurred. Laura used the weapon against James and then turned it on herself, sustaining a shoulder injury. Neighbors heard the shots and called the rescue services. The helpers arrived quickly at the scene. James could not be saved. Laura was urgently taken to the hospital. Initially, the police pursued the version of a robbery that the injured woman reported, but the thorough investigation of the crime scene raised doubts among the investigators. No valuables were missing, and at the crime scene, the business card of a jeweler was found with a message from the young woman. From this, it emerged that she had planned a staging, but could not fully implement her plan. Instead, she sustained a minor injury in the attempt to fake an attack by a stranger. After her recovery, Laura met with the investigators. In conversation with them, she changed her version of events several times. The young woman insisted that she and James were attacked by robbers, but she constantly got entangled in contradictions about the details and could not explain the appearance of the note. Also, the question remained open why exactly her weapon was used. Under the pressure of facts, Laura admitted her involvement in the incident. She told that she acted because of the complicated relationship with James and feared for her well-being. According to her words, the young man showed unpleasant character traits and frequently met with other women, which greatly troubled her. The investigation brought new details to light. It turned out that James informed Laura that day that he wanted to end the relationship. Apparently, she had foreseen such a turn. She had prepared the note and had the weapon with her. Everything indicated that the young woman did not want to share James with someone else. After the sentencing, Laura was taken to the juvenile detention facility in California. Although this institution was considered milder than ordinary correctional facilities, staying there was not easy. Laura was attacked several times by other inmates, but overall the time passed without serious incidents. In 1987, after 5 years, Laura was released. During her imprisonment, she acquired training as a psychologist. It seemed as if the ordeal should have changed her and put her on the right path. Initially, it was also so. In the early 90s, she moved to Baltimore, found work as a nurse in a hospital, and married. However, the work seemed too strenuous to her. The salary did not meet the young woman's expectations, and she changed professions by starting as a dancer in a nightclub. She liked the new work. The good income required little effort. Laura's striking appearance attracted many admirers who showered her with gifts. The young woman led an eventful private life. She married twice more without divorcing her first husband. When this came to light, the authorities initiated proceedings. In 1993, a trial took place where Laura was accused of bigamy. Ultimately, she received 6 months probation. This punishment did not change her behavior. 2 years later, Laura was arrested again, this time for faking an insurance case. She shot at her car to receive compensation. During her arrest, stolen items were found, including a ring worth about $3,000 that had been stolen from neighbors. For fraud, she was sentenced to 7 years, but spent only 6 months behind bars. The verdict was overturned. In 1997, Laura moved to Corpus Christi, a coastal city in southern Texas. There she returned to dancing, worked as a bikini model, and began selling adult entertainment. This business proved to be very lucrative and brought her considerable income. After Laura had saved enough money, she fulfilled her long-standing dream. She acquired a villa by the ocean. She always pursued her goals persistently, and in this phase of life met the Brit and Phil Day. Their relationship developed rapidly. Soon they married, and then the couple had a son, Cameron. The people around her noticed that Laura was attentive to her son, accompanied him to football training, but hardly communicated with other women. These kept their distance because they feared her influence on their husbands. As it turned out, their concerns were justified. The outwardly happy marriage of Laura and Phil lasted until the summer of 2011. As a sales representative, she met the truck driver David Seiling, who was 12 years younger than her. Laura's striking appearance attracted the attention of all the men at work. When they met, it turned out that both were unhappy in their marriages. David was involved with Kelly, and Laura was tired of the monotonous life with Phil. An attraction immediately arose between them. David honestly told his wife about his new feelings, which was unpleasant news for her. However, Kelly did not oppose it and agreed to the divorce. Laura and David completed the separation from their partners and began living together. After the divorce in May 2012, she even left Cameron to Phil to devote herself entirely to her new relationship. David received the right to see his son on weekends. The rest of the time he lived with Kelly. The young couple spent almost all their time together. Occasionally, Taylor, David's son, joined them. His mother was cautious toward Laura, who had come into their family and destroyed the marriage. But Laura made an effort to befriend both, as she understood how important they were to her chosen one. Gradually, she succeeded in finding a common language with both Taylor and his mother. Laura was happy with her new partner. In August 2012, she and David married in Las Vegas. The couple settled in Laura's spacious villa with a pool. David worked as a long-distance truck driver and was often absent, while Laura enjoyed domestic comfort without working. But soon, something unforeseen happened. On the 5th of October 2012, a Friday, Laura picked up Taylor from school for the weekend with his father. She had arranged in advance with Kelly, Taylor's mother, to extend the time between father and son. Kelly had nothing against it. They had no special plans for the day. On the way home, as Laura told it, Taylor himself asked for a beach picnic. After lunch, they returned home to get beach things. When they reached the coast, they found that the nearest beach was overcrowded. The parking lot was filled with cars. All spots were occupied by vacationers. The noise and bustle surprised Laura. Normally it was quiet here in the middle of a workday. She decided to look for a quieter place further away. After they had found a suitable spot, they stopped, and Laura allowed Taylor to swim. Normally, Taylor wore a special life jacket, but on this day he could not wear it because of an injury to his neck. The collar rubbed against the skin, so Laura decided to let him swim without protection. To convince herself of the safety of this decision, she observed his swimming abilities for several minutes. What she saw reassured her. Taylor could really keep himself above water well, as he regularly practiced in the home pool. Laura remained on the shore to monitor what was happening. Initially, everything went well, but after a few minutes, something pulled Taylor underwater, and he disappeared from view. Laura rushed in panic to the accident site. She dove and began to search, but unsuccessfully. Soon after, she noticed him several meters from the diving spot, floating motionless on the waves. The stepmother swam to him and tried to bring him to consciousness, but he did not respond. The woman pulled Taylor to shore. He showed no signs of life. She tried to provide first aid, but could not properly perform the necessary actions due to her strong agitation, although she was trained in it. Laura called the emergency number 911, but the dispatcher warned of a long waiting time because of the distance of the accident site from the city. Determined to act herself, Laura brought Taylor to the car and drove to the hospital. In 30 minutes, she covered 20 kilometers. Arriving at the destination, she rushed inside and called for help. Despite all the efforts of the medical staff, it was no longer possible to help Taylor. The doctors forwarded the information to law enforcement agencies for verification according to standard procedure. The police officers had to deliver the sad news to David. When the father learned of the incident, he immediately set out from his distant workplace to the hospital. The investigators also informed Kelly, who likewise hurried there. When she arrived first, she only learned that Taylor had had an accident in the water. The doctors could not share any further details. Laura was nearby. It turned out that the stepmother had decided on her own without informing anyone to bring Taylor to the beach at his request. She insisted on the version of an accident. Kelly began to make loud accusations against Laura, but she remained surprisingly indifferent. Later, David arrived. Without knowing the details, he initially made accusations against Kelly, as he thought Taylor had been with her. When he learned the truth that the boy had been with Laura, he was shattered. The first doubts about the randomness of the incident came to the mother. She did not understand why Laura had brought Taylor to the beach without permission and allowed him to swim without protective equipment. The investigators also noticed inconsistencies. First, the nearest hospital was not chosen. Another clinic and the fire department were closer. Laura explained this with panic. Second, it raised questions why she did not provide first aid despite her medical training and hospital experience, although the dispatcher gave clear instructions. Instead, she drove Taylor for half an hour to a distant hospital, although she knew about the critical importance of the first minutes. This decision seemed inexplicable. Laura, David, and Kelly were asked to give statements at the station. During the conversation with the investigators, Laura behaved unusually distant, as if the incident had not touched her at all. During the interrogation, she sat with her head lowered and avoided eye contact with the investigators. Her answers were confused, without concrete details. The story seemed unbelievable. Laura could not even say how far Taylor was from the shore at that time. Instead of a clear answer, she only repeated how handsome he was and how quickly the wave had swept him away. Her behavior raised questions among the investigators. Taylor's mother was in deep despair and accused Laura of neglecting her supervisory duty. For David, this situation was also a heavy blow. Taylor was the most important thing in his life. It turned out that the father was just working with lawyers to get full custody of his son. In this fact, the police saw a possible motive for the incident. Laura, who was known for her possessive character, had even sent her son to her ex-husband earlier to build a new relationship. Presumably, the plans of her husband to get full custody of Taylor did not please her. The investigators suspected that Taylor's presence could disturb their time together, and Laura possibly saw in him an obstacle to her new relationship with David. In pursuing this theory, they asked the man how the relationship between Laura and Taylor was shaped. David answered that as far as he knew, they got along well. A week before the incident, he began searching for information about his wife on the internet and discovered disturbing facts from her past. This surprised him greatly, as if it were about a completely different person. When David addressed her about it, Laura convinced him of her innocence and explained that she had defended herself against an aggressive ex-partner. He believed her and continued to entrust her with the supervision of his son. The investigators examined Laura's story and discovered many disturbing facts. They noticed abnormalities in her behavior on the day of the incident. She did not inform the parents about her plans, avoided the public beach in favor of a secluded place, allowed swimming without protective equipment, and did not ensure adequate supervision. All this led to the arrest of Laura Day on a serious charge. The investigation conducted a water experiment with a special doll of corresponding size, but the results did not confirm Laura's version of events. Less than a day after her arrest, she paid a bail of $50,000 and was released. She was forbidden to leave the city and to stay in places where young people gather. Her husband at this time still believed in Laura's innocence and supported her. The husband suffered greatly from what had happened and planned a move to Florida with his wife after Laura would be cleared of all suspicions. He considered the whole thing a misunderstanding. Despite the movement restrictions, the main suspect went carelessly shopping at the mall a few days later. She tried to hide under a wig, but a law enforcement officer recognized her. On the 4th of December 2012, she was arrested again for violating bail conditions. Laura denied all accusations. The investigation meticulously gathered information. A witness appeared whose statements contradicted the version of the urgent need to rescue Taylor. According to his words, Laura calmly brought the boy away from the beach, smiled, and waved goodbye. In January 2013, precisely these statements became the key evidence in court. The description of Laura's calm behavior did not fit at all with her narrative of the emergency situation. The prosecutor emphasized that the deviation from the usual order, where she picked up Taylor together with her husband, pointed to the premeditation of the actions. According to the prosecution's version, everything was planned in advance. Laura picked up Taylor earlier and explained this with the desire to give him more time with his father, although he was at work. She informed no one about her plans to go to the beach. Had the random witness not been at the beach who noticed her departure and testified, Laura might possibly have escaped responsibility. The statements of the accused changed several times during the trial. Initially, Laura claimed that she and Taylor had driven home before the beach visit to get swimwear. Later, it turned out that this did not correspond to the truth. She already had everything necessary with her. The question arose: how did she know about the planned picnic? It also seemed unusual that Taylor was not wearing a life jacket. He had never swum without one before. The explanation for this seemed unconvincing, as no friction marks were found. It was also disturbing that Taylor was far from shore. It also seemed strange that Laura did not apply first aid measures despite her medical training and hospital experience. These are basic skills that she had practiced multiple times in practice. Special concerns were raised by the woman's criminal past. The prosecution suspected that the prison sentence had not changed her. Considering that the previous incident was connected with jealousy, similar feelings possibly arose here as well. The prosecutor put forward the thesis that Laura felt jealousy toward her stepson, as she wanted to have her husband's attention for herself alone. The defense, however, insisted on the absence of direct witnesses to the incident and claimed that no one could refute the accused's version of what had happened. The witness only noticed how Taylor left the beach together with a woman. The medical examination revealed no signs of forced impact. This indicated that the incident might have been accidental. Statistics show that approximately 800 similar water accidents happen in the USA each year. The prosecution emphasized that the defendant made no attempts to provide assistance. Furthermore, Laura was characterized as an emotionally unstable personality. However, this was not confirmed by specialists. Laura's behavior indeed raised questions. She suffered from fears of loneliness and strived to be the center of attention. The woman was impulsive and saw other women as rivals, which is why she had no close female friends. At the same time, she actively flirted with men. During the trial, her actions indicated a deep fear of being alone. Presumably, she saw her new husband's former wife as a threat. Despite the serious situation, Laura seemed not to comprehend the consequences. In one of the sessions, she asked her husband David whom he loved more, her or his ex-wife. This question seemed inappropriate given the possible consequences of the court proceedings. Given her desire to be the only one in her husband's life, Taylor could have been perceived as an obstacle. Moreover, as long as he was nearby, the connection between Kaylee and David remained. That could have disrupted Laura's plans. In her consciousness, the removal of the obstacle might have appeared as a form of self-defense. She was fighting in a way for her place in her husband's life. Laura suffered severely from the possibility of losing David's attention. Initially, the young husband supported his wife, but when new circumstances of the case came to light, even he changed his opinion about the incident with his close person. The man filed for divorce, and finally their marriage broke apart. In June 2013, the court announced Laura's sentence. life imprisonment without the possibility of early release. Despite all the prosecutor's arguments, she continues to insist on her innocence. This judicial decision continues to provoke discussions among all who try to understand what happened. Direct evidence against Laura was not found. All indications were only indirect. Nevertheless, this did not help her escape imprisonment. However, Laura herself does not lose her zest for life even behind bars. She has found a new life partner whom she already met in the correctional facility. She easily began a new relationship, although she will never be able to leave the walls of the correctional institution again. On Wednesday, the 24th of August 2011, an unforeseen incident occurred in a quiet suburban area. Michelle Despain, a 33-year-old bank employee, had taken time off work to get important documents that she had forgotten at home. When she returned around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, she noticed something unusual: an unlocked back door. When Michelle crossed the threshold, she froze at the sight. The entire house had sunk into chaos. Objects lay everywhere. Torn open drawers were open and empty, and the floor was covered with glass shards. In the bathroom, she found scattered clothing, and in the bedroom, an open jewelry box. As she continued through the house and assessed the extent of the incident, Michelle discovered her 34-year-old husband, Mark, in a motionless state. In panic, the woman ran onto the street, fearing that the perpetrators might still be nearby. With trembling hands, she dialed the emergency number 911. The rescue forces who arrived at the scene were confronted with a picture of complete chaos. At first glance, everything pointed to a failed burglary. The medical examination revealed that the incident had happened about an hour earlier. The experts discovered 2 gunshot traces, and the nature of the injuries indicated contact from minimal distance. However, during the detailed examination of the crime scene, the investigators were puzzled by the strange disorder, as if someone had deliberately created the appearance that valuables had been targeted. During the investigation, interesting details about the day came to light. Mark had been at home, then met with his wife for lunch at a cafe where they ate ice cream together. He even took an additional portion of dessert home with him. After that, Michelle returned to the bank, and Mark went home, where this mysterious incident occurred shortly thereafter. The investigators became aware of strange circumstances of the incident in the house. Everything indicated that this was not an ordinary enrichment. An ice cream cup on the counter showed that Mark had just returned from the cafe. The impression arose that someone in the house was waiting for his return. Most puzzling was that no valuables had disappeared from the house, as if the uninvited guests had come with a completely different intention. To better understand the situation, the investigators began to examine the life story of Mark and his family more closely. The story of Mark Despain began like a beautiful romantic fairy tale. At 19 years old, he began a relationship with 18-year-old Michelle, whom he knew from school days. She already had a daughter from an earlier relationship, but this did not prevent their feelings from developing. The young couple decided quickly to move in together. Mark's parents supported their decision and bought a trailer for the couple. Mark immediately accepted Michelle's daughter like his own and treated her with sincere care and warmth. Mark's professional career was connected to the family business. He became a real estate investor and appraiser and took over the experience of his father, who owned numerous rental properties. Soon after, the couple married. Mark's business went well. After founding his own company, he achieved considerable success. The family was able to move from the trailer into a luxurious house with a pool in the upscale area of Jonesboro, Arkansas. Thanks to the hard work of both spouses, they could afford a life of prosperity. The family grew by 2 boys. Now they were 5 and appeared from the outside like a picture book family. 3 to 4 times a year, they vacationed at expensive resorts in Jamaica and Mexico and regularly visited Disneyland. Michelle initially devoted herself to domestic duties, but when the children got older, she decided to develop professionally. She took over the bookkeeping in her husband's business and later found employment at the local bank. Despite her husband's suggestions to focus only on the family, she strived for self-realization. Michelle enjoyed her prosperous life and liked to maintain contacts in the circles of the local elite and influential personalities. When one began to investigate this tangled story, one was initially interested in Mark's wife, Michelle. It is usual practice to check the immediate environment. She was the one who discovered her husband under very mysterious circumstances in their house, whereupon she was asked to come for questioning to the station. During the questioning, Michelle told an unexpected detail. She had not planned at all to drive home that day. She was there by chance because she only had to pick up some papers. According to her statements, she spent almost the entire day at the workplace. The verification confirmed Michelle's statements. Until noon, she was indeed in the office. During the lunch break, she and Mark met at a nearby cafe. This meeting was recorded by surveillance cameras. After that, Michelle returned to work and Mark went home. Later, she briefly left work to get documents. Exactly then, she discovered what had happened. At this point, however, an hour had already passed, and the cameras clearly showed that Michelle had been in the office the entire time. Although no direct moments of suspicion against Michelle remained, the investigators continued to observe her behavior attentively, which did not seem quite ordinary to them. The questioning of residents brought new information. Neighbors noticed an unknown man who drove through the area in an old blue Mercedes. No one had seen him in the vicinity before. The authorities began to investigate whether Mark had adversaries. Acquaintances of the family described him as a domineering and ambitious person who could build complicated relationships with his environment. This trail was pursued more thoroughly. The verification at Mark's workplace raised new questions. It turned out that he should have been in the office that day, but unexpectedly decided to go hunting, and then stayed home after all. This raised the logical question among the investigators. How could an outsider have known about his whereabouts? Possibly someone had monitored his movements. To clarify all details and find possibly overlooked clues, the investigators met again with Michelle to clarify the entire sequence of events of that day. On that day, Michelle met with Mark for lunch at a cafe near the bank where she worked. After the meeting, she returned to the office around 13:30 and set off for home after 14:30. In her new statement, Michelle shared further details. When she saw Mark on the floor, she went to him and tried to get a reaction. She called his name, tried to wake him up, but he remained motionless. When she recognized the situation, she immediately dialed the emergency number 911. In search of support, Michelle hurried to the neighbors, but no one was home. While she waited in front of their house, she contacted her mother, told her about the incident and asked her to come. When her mother arrived, Michelle was already in front of her house together with the arrived rescue forces and police. To the investigators' question about possible adversaries of her husband, Michelle named to everyone's surprise without hesitation Mark's father, Jack. She explained her suspicions. Initially, Mark's parents made a good impression. They helped with accommodation by giving a trailer as a gift for the start of their life together. Mark worked successfully for several years in his father's company. When his role in the business became central, he asked for an increase in his share. After his father's refusal, Mark left and founded his own company. Jack felt this as betrayal, and their communication broke off. Over time, Michelle recognized Jack's true character, a man with cold calculation and difficult temperament. He showed open dislike for her daughter from her first marriage, which led to a serious conflict when the girl turned 13. Jack also did not like Michelle herself, which strengthened her suspicions regarding his involvement in the incident. Michelle's father, who had previously worked for Jack, confirmed her fears. He had been a witness to the tense relationship between father and son, and had heard Jack's sharp statements against Mark because of business disagreements. This information attracted particular attention from the investigators, and they began to thoroughly investigate the relationship between Mark and his father. The investigations uncovered a long-lasting conflict between Mark and Jack over the family business and finances, but it remained unclear why the events took this unexpected turn right now. In a conversation with Mark's parents, new details came to light. The father admitted the disagreements but pointed to the true initiator, Michelle. According to the relatives' statements, Michelle had excessive demands despite Mark's high income. She was the one who insisted that her husband demand from his father the transfer of control over the company. Mark later admitted this to his father himself. After this argument, the relationship between father and son remained, but became cooler, while Michelle was no longer accepted by the family. Shortly before the incident, Mark told his parents that he wanted to separate from his wife. The father told the investigators that his son called him that day and asked him to get the hunting equipment from the house. According to his words, only Michelle knew about her husband's plans to be home at that time. Mark's mother expressed the assumption that Michelle feared the divorce. The status and financial prosperity that marriage with Mark offered meant too much to Michelle to simply give up. The parents advised the investigators to examine Michelle's actions that day more closely. They suggested that behind the external harmlessness, a completely different person could be hiding. The father suspected her involvement in the incident, if not directly, then through organization. Jack shared with the police a story about a conflict with Brooke, Michelle's stepdaughter. When he discovered inappropriate photos of Brooke, he demanded that she break off contact with her boyfriend and threatened to tell the parents. As retaliation, Brooke made a selfie on Jack's phone, sent it to her friend, and complained to her mother about her stepfather's inappropriate behavior. Michelle raised serious accusations against Jack, who denied everything. A major scandal broke out. Jack's wife even filed for divorce. Michelle turned to the police, but the investigation proved Jack's innocence. The photos were made by Brooke herself. The accusations were dropped, the wife returned, but a bitter aftertaste remained. Jack's reputation had suffered considerably. After that, they decided to break off all contact with Michelle and her daughter. Later, Brooke confessed that she had acted under the influence of her mother. Michelle planned to destroy Mark's relationship with his father, and this plan almost succeeded. The story of Jack and his wife raised no questions. On that fateful day, they were provably on vacation in another city with many witnesses. The investigators' attention turned to Michelle, Mark's wife, after a conversation with his father. The officers tried to understand the situation. What reasons could a woman have who had spent 15 happy years with her husband? They had, after all, 2 wonderful children, a flourishing business, and seemingly complete harmony in the family. The assumption about Michelle's involvement in the act seemed strange to the investigators. After all, her husband was the main breadwinner of the family. However, the investigations brought unexpected details to light. Instead of an inconsolable wife, Michelle proved to be a woman with a secret relationship. A few months before the fateful day, she had begun a relationship with a young colleague who was only 24 years old. She supported him completely, paid for his apartment, food, and all bills with the money her husband earned. When checking the documents, it also turned out that despite outward prosperity, the couple had serious debts, about $2 million. Furthermore, it was discovered that Michelle regularly withdrew money from her husband's business account. Additional cause for concern was the information about Mark's insurance. He had 2 policies with a total sum of $1 million. These facts prompted the investigators to invite Michelle to another conversation. When asked about the affair, she did not deny the new relationship with the young man, but insisted that her husband knew nothing about this relationship. During the interrogation, Michelle told that her marriage had long been far from ideal. They had talked about divorce and she was planning a move. However, the woman categorically rejected any suggestion of her involvement in what had happened. According to her words, she had no reason to wish her husband ill. He treated the children excellently and would have provided for them appropriately in case of divorce. It simply made no sense, she claimed. Despite initial suspicions, the law enforcement agencies had no solid evidence against Michelle or other participants. The surveillance cameras of the bank where Michelle worked documented her presence at the critical time. The recordings also showed that her father came by later, said something quickly and left again. The investigations had stalled, but soon there was a new lead. An anonymous tipster reported that a young man was bragging about his involvement in the incident with Mark Despain. The trail led to Terence Barker. When checking this information, it turned out Terence's cell phone signal was indeed located near Mark's residence that evening. Additionally, it became known that Terence's friend owned an old blue Mercedes. Mark's neighbors, who had previously mentioned the African Americans in the Mercedes, identified Terence from a photo. The investigators invited the young man to a conversation, but he denied any connection to the incident. However, after the investigators presented the witness statements and the cell phone location data, Terence changed his position. He confessed that he had agreed for a promised reward of $10,000. Although he did not name the client, even after he received no payment, he was taken into custody. Next, his friend, the driver of the blue Mercedes, Johnny Hubbard, was summoned for interrogation. An interesting circumstance came to light. Johnny knew Mark as one of his tenants. He decided to cooperate with the investigators and told the complete version of events. According to his statements, Michelle's father, Carl Kelly, whom he also knew, had contacted him with a proposal. Johnny agreed to participate for the money. Terence learned about it and also wanted to join the matter. They met with Carl in a church parking lot to discuss the details. Terence was assigned the main role, although he did not even know who Mark was. He was only driven by financial interest. Johnny was also arrested. When Terence learned about his friend's statements, he also decided to cooperate. He confirmed Johnny's story and added that Carl had handed him the equipment at the church. Carl showed them Mark's house and instructed them. They waited for his signal on the day of the incident. Terence also reported about the involvement not only of Carl, but also his daughter, Michelle. According to his words, she coordinated the entire operation, gave her father instructions by phone, and he helped her and provided cover. When reviewing the messages between Michelle and her father, the investigators discovered important correspondence that revealed their plans. On the morning of that day, at 8:20, Michelle wrote to her father, "It has to be today. I cannot live like this. A terrible morning." The father answered briefly, "Good. You can invite him to lunch." The investigation began to come together into a complete picture. According to the investigators' view, Michelle arranged a lunch with Mark, which enabled her father and Terence to break into the house. There, they could wait for Mark's return. After examining Michelle's behavior on that day, the investigators concluded that her reaction when returning home was acted. She had specially taken time off work earlier, knowing well what she would find. Her indifference at the sight of her impaired husband on the kitchen floor now made sense. She knew about the incident in advance. The information about the completed task she received from her father when he came to the bank. The details of Carl's phone bill confirmed his presence in the house at the critical time. He personally monitored the execution of what was planned. Further analysis of the correspondence between Michelle and Mark showed how persistently she invited her husband to lunch, although he initially declined and planned to go hunting. After long persuasion, Mark finally agreed to meet. During their lunch, Michelle constantly exchanged messages with her father. When the meal was over and her husband drove home, she sent her father a signal message. The law enforcement agencies arrested Michelle together with her father. Initially, Michelle rejected all accusations, but when the investigators presented irrefutable evidence, she changed her position. According to her words, her father was the originator of the plan, who wanted to receive an insurance payment and take control of Mark's business. She claimed to have learned about the incident only after her father shared the information with her sometime after what had happened. However, this version found no support in the investigations, because it was Michelle who sent her father the morning message about readiness to carry out the plan, and it was also she who persuaded her husband to go to that fateful lunch. This indicated her complete knowledge of the impending events. After the father's confession, Michelle and Carl were accused of the serious crime against Mark. All 4 participants of the case later agreed with the prosecution, which brought them some reduction in punishment, but took away the possibility of later challenging the court verdict. Mark's family supported this decision to avoid lengthy court proceedings. Their main wish was to achieve justice, that those involved in what happened to their son received their deserved punishment. By court decision, Terence Barker and Carl Kelly each received 35 years imprisonment. Johnny Hubbard was sentenced to 18 years imprisonment. Michelle Despain was to spend 30 years in a correctional institution.